Hello to all dear Manhwa fans. I hope you're enjoying a fantastic day. First of all, I want to send a very special greeting to everyone who shared their comments on the previous video. Now, moving on to the special shout out, Cedric Shepherd 4459, who left the first comment on the previous video. You are the fastest of our followers. Thank you so much. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this incredible summary. Kim defended himself by saying that if he was going to lie, he should at least do it convincingly, as he knew she didn't have a part-time job and had been out partying. He'd seen it in one of her posts. No job would require a dress that seductive. He demanded she apologize for not showing up the day before. Nabi didn't care, and told Kim to leave because her class was about to start. She remembered she had been called to room 205 at 3 o'clock and was determined to go, but asked Kim to leave her alone. Kim noticed Nabi wasn't going to apologize, and his mission to get an apology was still in progress. While walking down the hallway, Ken thought it would be easier to get an apology, but he wasn't planning to give up now. He had one condition met, and everything was going according to his plan. To complete the mission, he needed to use his new acquisition from the last mass, the ability called "And If I Hate You," which worked to control the actions of hostile opponents. It was a powerful skill, but it required specific conditions. The opponent had to be hostile toward the player and feel religiously humiliated. Kem regretted not being able to get Nabi to incriminate herself with the photos for his skill to work, but he was still determined to complete his mission, even though it didn't seem like an easy task. Ken had a second option and hoped it wouldn't be too late. Both Ayeon and Kim were waiting for Nabi again. Ayeon wasn't sure if Nabi would show up, as 30 minutes had passed since the agreed time. Kim felt sorry for Ayeon because he had told Nabi to meet at 3 o'clock. Kim wasn't sure if he should execute his plan at that moment. When he mentioned that Nabi would come, he used his seductive eye ability. His plan was to arrive at room 205 early with Ayeon. When Nabi arrived, she would wonder what he and Ayeon were doing. At that moment, Ayeon would feel awkward again, and Kim assumed Nabi would think those two crazy people were praying. Despite calling her there, he was sure the second condition would be met, and he knew Nabi might break her word again. He had nothing to lose. Even though Ayeon wanted to go to a magical town, Kim told her it wasn't necessary because he had hidden the place so no one would see them praying. Meanwhile, Nabi walked down the hallway, her class having ended early. She cursed Kim for following her to her class. She arrived on time at the classroom she was called to and wasn't sure if it was room 205. Upon entering, she realized something. Both Ayeon and Kim were holding a mass to believe in God. Ayeon was losing her mind over all of it, but Kim realized the conditions had been met. A window asked if he wanted to activate his ability, "And if I hate you." Nabi was embarrassed and planned to go home but heard Kim telling her to stay still. She stopped, wondering why her body wasn't reacting. Ayeon thought Kim was talking to her, but he mentioned it was because they were moving too fast during the mass, and he wanted to guide her on God's path. Kim thought Nabi had already arrived, but needed her to wait because she couldn't apologize yet. Despite everything, he had exactly what he needed. During their mass, Kim told Ayeon that before finishing, he would give her holy water to drink. Nabi cursed because she couldn't move and didn't understand what was happening. She wondered how things had come to this point. Kim gave the holy water to Ayeon so her soul could rest, which granted him more experience points. At that moment, Ayeon mentioned she needed to go to the bathroom because she was about to vomit. She noticed the door was ajar and hoped no one had seen them praying. Ayeon realized Nabi was there, which startled her, and she couldn't vomit, granting Kim even more experience points. Ayeon was intrigued by Nabi's presence, who could only greet her, which made Ayeon scream and run out of the room, embarrassed. Kim thought he hadn't intended for Ayeon to encounter Nabi and felt sorry, but now he wanted to finish the mission. He asked Nabi to come in. Nabi asked Kim what had just happened, but he played dumb. Nabi didn't understand how he'd done it and wanted to resolve the matter, as it seemed strange. Kim noticed that despite his ability, Nabi could still talk but was visibly nervous. He tried to get her to apologize. Nabi clasped her hands together but didn't do anything else, not understanding why she did it. She asked Ken what he was doing, and he only wanted to hear an apology. Nabi ended up insulting him, which was a problem for Kim because he couldn't even control her properly with his ability. Nabi shouted at him to stop, and when Kim told her to be quiet, she covered her mouth with her hands. Ken thought he would resolve everything with his abilities, until he noticed a window indicating that his target had developed a strong faith in religion. This intrigued Ken, as he didn't know when it had happened. We moved to a small memory of Navi, where she had experienced this feeling before, comparing herself to a tamal, but more because of how tightly bound she felt. At that moment, Navi felt a bit of faith in God while being with Kem, It was the same sensation, and she felt unfortunate, hoping he wouldn't notice. However, Kim noticed it due to a status window. He asked Navi if she wasn't going to apologize and demanded a response. Navi assumed he was joking and kept asking why she couldn't move. She told Kim to let her go, warning him he was messing with the wrong person and that she would undo him. Ken knew Navi was mistaken because she couldn't move, so he asked her again to be quiet. Now he had to think of a new plan. He imagined telling Navi that if she didn't apologize, she would live her whole life like this, though he knew threatening her wouldn't work. To make matters worse, his ability's duration was only 10 minutes. Another window also informed him that Navi was genuinely fervent in her faith in God. Kem understood the situation and used his quick view skill, obtained during the tutorial, to check Navi's religious preferences. He discovered that the girl was excited by the idea of others having control, which surprised him. Kim understood why Navi's faith was boiling over. This was his chance before the ability's time ran out. He was willing to accept her apology in his own way, using his eye ability again to make Navi feel her strength waning, sensing she needed to pray. Navi felt Kem was doing something but couldn't understand what. Kem insisted that if she had something to say, now was the time. Navi asked again what he had done to her, and Kim told her to bow first as an apology for the insult moments ago. Navi said she didn't know what to do, because she felt her mind was being corrupted and that she was going crazy. She begged Ken to stop, but he replied that he was a bit crazy himself, though he knew what to do in these cases. He told Navi to clean the chalice. Navi, incredulous, refused to let that happen, but Kim's ability made her body move on its own. Navi thought it was only his voice making it happen, which she found thrilling. Seeing the chalice shine, she suddenly thought about finding the path to God. Kim noticed that Navi was a bit clumsy in cleaning the chalice, but even though his original plan hadn't worked, he was pleased that the alternative was succeeding. Navi was usually aggressive with others, but she didn't see anything wrong with it. Still, drinking from the chalice wasn't enough for her, so Kim decided to begin his main mission. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Ayeon was fixing herself up despite knowing there were cameras in the classroom. She couldn't resist her urge to purify her soul that day. She drank holy water and wondered if Navi had seen them during the Mass. Ayeon didn't know, and it embarrassed her greatly. She wondered if Navi was with Kim at that moment and needed to contact him. She sent Kim a message asking if he had talked to Abby about whether she had seen anything, and reminded him that the classroom they were in would be used starting at 4. Kim hadn't noticed his phone because it was put away before they started their Mass. Navi questioned Kim about reading the Bible, saying it wouldn't work on her. Kim was happy because he felt he was becoming a good priest through his efforts. He knew Navi was lying because deep down, she wanted to find the path to the Lord. In her thoughts, Navi cursed Kim, hating to admit that she wanted to believe in a deity. She asked Kim to guide her on the path to God. Ken needed to hear something first. He wanted to hear her apologize for the group task. He knew she had been very indifferent about it, so he asked her to apologize. Navi didn't understand why it was so important, but since Kim wouldn't continue the ceremony, she had no choice but to apologize for the difficulties with the task and for her indifferent behavior. She admitted she had been crazy in that situation and quickly asked for help in finding the path to Jesus Christ. While reading Bible chapters, a window appeared for Kim, indicating that he had become Navi's first belief in God, which would grant him additional experience points. Kim didn't understand what the window meant and wondered if Navi had always been pure of heart. He didn't believe that Navi, at 20 years old, could be pure of heart, especially since she was the protagonist of many rumors. At that moment, Kim was lost in his thoughts as the ability, "and if you hate me," wore off. When it deactivated, Navi finally regained control of the Mass and prayed in her own way. She mentioned that she might be a little clumsy when it came to believing in God, as she had never prayed before, which for Kim meant that his system wasn't lying. They continued their path toward the Lord, and Kim gained more experience points by giving Navi an unconventional kiss. Because they were so engrossed in their Mass, Kim gained additional experience points for being the type of guy Navi liked. He told her she was about to see St. Peter, and those words resonated even more in Kim's mind. He read her more Bible verses, and a new window appeared before Kim, indicating that Navi was so excited she would soon have a divine revelation. As they continued their ministries, Navi wanted to know where Kim had learned so much, and if it was with someone he had been with before. Kim knew that she still had a somewhat corrupted soul, and wanted Navi to focus on understanding God's words, which excited her greatly. The game window congratulated Kim, and Navi's divine revelation was that her divine angel was Mare, which granted Kim even more experience points. Kim wanted Navi to calm down because they could be overheard, something Navi tried to do discreetly. Meanwhile, we see two girls heading to their climbing classes. One of them, a pretty blonde named Seo, agreed to go with her friends since they had classes in room 205. Back with Kim, he was closing a drawer that wouldn't shut properly with all his strength, while Navi drank some holy water. Still, Kim wanted them to leave as soon as possible because he felt a bit embarrassed. Navi asked him for help to leave everything in order, and when they were ready to go, Kim opened the door and ran into the two girls heading to their class. Kim was stunned, thinking they were in a room that wouldn't have class for a while, and wondered what the girls were doing there. One of the girls commented that she had never seen him in class before. Kim grabbed Navi's hand and ran, saying they had entered the wrong room. For the girls, it was a strange occurrence, but something about it caught Ao's attention. Once outside, Kim and Navi talked about how they hadn't been discovered. Navi blushed at what she saw, and Kim didn't understand what she was admiring so much until he noticed she was still holding his hand. Kim let go, telling her he expected her participation in the group project. Navi agreed, mentioning it, but Kim didn't understand why she was saying that. Navi wanted to know if Kim didn't have any more classes because she didn't either. She asked him to walk her home, claiming her legs hurt from all the running and that he should take responsibility. That same afternoon, Kim noticed that Navi's house was quite far, which gave them plenty of time to talk along the way. Navi explained that she had misunderstood things and that she had actually been busy that day. Now Kim understood that Navi worked for a magazine as a model, covering religious topics, which embarrassed her. Kim wanted to know why she hadn't informed him about the photo shoot session, as they would have understood. Navi also wanted an apology from Kim for misinterpreting her work situation. She mentioned a tattoo on her back that she got from a close friend who was a tattoo artist. Navi was aware of her bad reputation, but hoped Kim didn't believe the rumors, which clearly made him blush. Navi teased him a bit for being new to this, while he stayed silent. He apologized, which made Navi laugh as she found him adorable when nervous. She decided to let it go. Kim's nervousness stemmed from Navi's rough demeanor. Unfortunately for the girl, they were already reaching her house. When she was about to point out where she lived, Kim was still thinking she was a good person and unlikely to be the daughter of a gangster or have a tattooed boyfriend, as the rumors suggested. At that moment, a rather bulky guy noticed Navi arriving and got upset upon seeing someone as skinny as Kim by her side. The guy quickly approached and asked Kim who he was. Navi tried to explain that he was a senior from her school, asking Kim to leave her there and promising to explain everything later. However, when the other guy placed his hand on Navi's shoulder, he started boasting, saying that if she was afraid to go home alone, he could take her instead, as he didn't think Kim was capable of protecting her. Navi quickly brushed off his hand, telling him to be more careful with his words and insulting him by calling him a pig. She criticized his appearance and warned him to be more cautious next time. The guy, angry, raised his hand to teach Navi a lesson, but Kim stepped in to defend her. He didn't care who the man was, but didn't believe violence was the answer. Kim took a hit, falling to the ground, while Navi called for help. Kim heard her cries for help and realized that calling the police wouldn't get them there in time. He decided to try something else. He opened his status window and began maximizing a stat. As Navi pleaded with the man to let her go, Kim called out to the pig. The man turned, only to see Kim's fist land squarely on his hideous face, sending him flying from the impact. Kim appeared slightly exhausted from the effort, and upon checking his stats, he noticed he was at level 24, with a strength of 48 and 42 remaining points. Kim realized his strength had increased after spending half of his points, but he collapsed to the ground from fatigue. Navi screamed for him in worry, and when Kim woke up, he found himself resting on Navi's lap. She looked visibly concerned. Kim wanted to know what had happened, and Navi explained how he had knocked the other guy out with a single punch. Navi was relieved that Kim was okay, though she was slightly annoyed by his reaction, as he had been unconscious and she didn't know what to do. At that moment, Navi's stomach growled, so she invited Kim to eat. Navi had prepared several dishes, and as Kim tasted the food, she watched his reaction closely. When Kim commented that it was good, Navi brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal since it was common for people who live alone. Kim didn't understand because he didn't know how to cook, so Navi offered to cook for him every day. Kim thought that all the rumors about Navi were false, or well, almost all of them. The only truth was that her hobby was flower arrangements. Kim now knew that Navi was a great cook and, contrary to her image, was quite feminine. By the way, the guy from earlier wasn't her boyfriend, but rather a regular client of her tattoo artist friend. He had been after Navi since he met her, and after the punch, Kim hoped he would leave her alone. At that moment, Kim thanked her for the meal and wanted to head home before it got too late. However, Navi stopped him because she wanted him to stay and try the dessert, one her mom had made. If you know where this is going, there's no need to elaborate further. As you might imagine, Navi described the dessert, a blackberry tea. After eating the dessert and giving thanks for the meal, Kim used his holy water to thank Navi. He managed to perform a mini mass without using his abilities, and due to his progress, he gained more experience points and leveled up. A little later, Navi asked what he would do next, suggesting that having a blessing could be troublesome, something Kim was willing to take responsibility for, though he knew it would keep him safe. However, he was more focused on Navi's status bar and wondered what would happen if he pressed it. Kim approached and clicked on it, and suddenly, Navi began to glow. Kim didn't understand what was happening, but windows appeared congratulating him for having conquered Navi. Since it was his first conquest, he received a large amount of bonus experience points, leveled up again, and was given an explanation of what would happen next. Another window appeared, telling him there were 5 options for the conquest. A separate window showed Navi's status, indicating her occupation was a nun and that there were modes she could be in. Manual mode, where she loses her ego and follows orders. Autonomous mode, where she acts on her own but allows for precise control in settings. Minor mode, where she earns money, and religious mode, where she learns from others about God's word. Lastly, there was the release option, which emptied all indicators of the conquest. Kim was quite confused, as he didn't like any of these options, so he chose autonomous mode. Navi was freed but had a headache and couldn't remember what had happened. Kim hadn't thought about the type of game he had accepted in a long time, mainly because he had been invited, and he still wondered who had invited him. He also kept thinking about what was happening since an extra window showed him his missions: conquer 2 people and make a rosary. As a reward, he would receive the dungeon key. Kim was thinking about the rosary, but also about completing the mission. The first thing that came to his mind was checking Ayeon's indicator. The next morning, Ayeon was impressed by Navi's research, though Navi showed no interest in her words. Navi blushed, thinking about what Kim would say about her until she directly asked him. The boy congratulated her on her good work, which made Navi very happy and left Ayeon confused. Kim felt a bit uncomfortable, as he noticed Aeon's indicator was full and only needed a click. Later, everyone was leaving. Navi wanted to leave with Kim as soon as possible, congratulating Ayeon on her good work. The latter asked her to wait, as she wanted to talk to Kim for a moment. Navi waited outside the classroom while Ayeon wanted to know what Kim had done with Abby to make her participate so much in the group task and act so kindly toward him. Kim was more interested in the opportunity offered by the bar, and when Ayeon asked if he was listening, he clicked on the bar. A new window congratulated Kim for conquering Ayeon. Ken decided to leave her in autonomous mode, as he had done with Nai, since he had completed part of the mission. His second condition was to make a rosary, but Ayeon came to her senses, noticed Ken smiling strangely, and told him to stop and answer her questions. She also yelled at Navi for being annoying and wanting to be close to Kim. Navi reminded her that she had drunk holy water, and that it was Ayeon who had gotten too close to Kim. Ayeon didn't want to argue anymore, but Navi explained that her behavior was because she liked Kim a lot and forbade her from seeing him alone. This made Ayeon nervous, and she asked what they were going to do, mentioning to Kim that she had feelings for him. This angered Navi, and although Ayeon insisted that Kim hear her story, Kim was speechless as he watched them fight over him. He was nervous because the girls wanted to know whom he would choose. Kim didn't understand what was happening, as he needed to make a rosary to complete the mission. In another scene, a pop-up window granted him experience points for visiting a magical town with 2 girls. Ayeon was a little embarrassed, as was Navi. The protagonist earned more experience points for another kiss. You know how these things go. Going back a bit, the girls' fight could be heard in the hallway since they hadn't closed the classroom door. Kim asked them to calm down and be quiet, activating his eye ability. This worked on Ayeon, and although Navi wasn't going to stop, Kim also asked her to calm down. Both were under the effects of his ability until Navi had an idea. They could make a rosary. Ayeon agreed to this. Now back to the present, where Kim still didn't understand what was happening. I'll just mention the essentials to avoid issues with YouTube. The girls showed him cleaning techniques they had learned in Russia and fought for Kim's attention, asking him to teach them about God. At first, Kim thought praying together was a good idea, but he soon realized their intentions weren't a good sign. Moreover, he had to purify their souls, or he'd be in trouble. It took 3 chapters of praying, and though he completed the mission, they continued spreading the word of God, leveling up. Kim didn't remember how many verses they read, but it was more than 5. He was left utterly exhausted. After completing the mission, he received his reward, a dungeon key. This key was for a lower dungeon that could only be used between 1 and 2 a.m. He also unlocked an inventory. This was incredible for Ken, but when he tried to use the inventory for the first time, he didn't know how to store items in it. Only dungeon-related items could be stored. Too tired to figure it out that night, he decided to leave it for the next day. He just wanted to sleep and use his remaining points. He increased his endurance and wondered what else he should improve since he looked thin. He also thought about his height, but didn't know if there was a limit for that. By the time he finished, he had no points left. Kim felt great, assuming it was due to the points he had spent on his physique. When he looked in the mirror, he noticed he was a bit taller and his face had a fresher look. However, when he arrived at the university, he noticed everyone staring at him. Upon entering his class, Ayeon and Navi were still arguing about who had won the previous day. When Kim asked what they were doing, they were about to explain the reason for their fight, but hesitated, unsure if the person in front of them was the same Kim as always. To Navi, her oppa had become very attractive, assuming it was due to the love she felt for him. Ayeon noticed that not only did he look handsome, but he was also taller. Neither of them understood what was happening, but they weren't going to give up on winning him over. At that moment, someone interrupted them. Both turned around, annoyed to see who it was. It was a cheerful guy, excited to see such attractive girls in his department. He simply wanted to pass through because the only free seat was next to Kim. He asked them to let him through, but both Navi and Ayeon refused to move because they wanted to stay by their oppa's side. The guy asked if they were Kim's girlfriends, and both Navi and Ayeon hesitated to define their relationship with him. Ayeon decided it wasn't the time to argue and asked Kim to clarify his relationship with them. Kim could only say that he had other things to do and needed to leave. Ayeon couldn't believe it, thinking she had misheard, while Navi didn't understand why he wanted to leave at that moment. Kim was silently begging for someone to save him, unable to stop himself from wanting to flee. Right then, a new mission appeared, and the rewards marked with question marks piqued his curiosity. At that moment, the professor entered, asking everyone to take their seats. Kim thought the professor looked as lovely as ever. Later, the guy from before asked Kim to accompany him that same afternoon. Kim didn't understand what was happening, especially with one of the girls in front of him, who seemed familiar. She just kept staring at him intently. We'll leave today's video here. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll try to upload a video on Sunday. If you liked this one, please support me by leaving a subscribing, turning on the notification bell, and sharing it with your friends. Leave your comments if you want to appear in the next video. See you in the next summary. Bye.